preservation or preservation for others when you have to do an evil act. It's like you can't, because if you do that, that could lead to anything. Utility can lead to anything. It could lead, I don't know, unimaginable places. Hey, folks, it is April the 28th, and this is our last lecture before the final on Friday. And also, don't forget, on a separate note, the EOC is going to be next Monday. We're going to have a quick little relaxed review on Monday, but I don't want to stress it out too much. So make sure you go over your study guide. But it is next Wednesday. What did I say?
Monday.
No, Monday we're going to have a little review. I like review. Yeah.
Okay, so it's like 2 tests.
So Monday's the regular schedule. Regular schedule. So be here for 8 We'll do a little light reviewing to make sure you're on the up and up and all that good stuff. But I don't want to get too intense with it because stress is a killer.
I'm not changing the date. I've already gotten pushed back.
Yeah. So, and you can't do that EOC late. I mean, not well. You can't do the EOC late, and you can't do the final slate. So
I'll just like speed run the EOC.
Oh, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that.
I have to. My appointment, my driver's appointment.
What time is it?
But they're not letting people out early.
Oh, too bad.
Yeah, how are you gonna get out? They're not even letting parents on campus.
Oh, too bad.
You better tell somebody.
I'm going to tell Miss Coffin.
He will go use the restroom and never.
And then I'll just leave.
Man, because I'm telling you, like we lock the campus down, no parents involved. They don't take phone calls unless they really got to. Like, that's a bad. Can you reschedule that?
No.
Actually, you
No.
can, but it's gonna be a long.
I'm not waiting another 2 weeks. Ain't no way. I'm just
You're
gonna
gonna
skip
have
the
to
day.
work as soon as we're done with this. Go work it out.
Okay.
Try to see if you can do something.
I would much rather just skip the day of the EOC and like retake it later.
You just said you can't retake.
You can.
You can.
Oh, you can.
If you weren't there.
They'll pull you in later in the week.
Yeah.
To do it, like they probably
It's
make
still
you on
just
Friday.
that.
Well, yeah, you better go talk to us. She's going to tell you. Too bad it's so sad. I bet, but she might work with you. But yeah, you be upfront and honest. Be upfront and honest about it. Hey, so the last time.
And then if she says no, I just will be sick.
Okay. Wait, where were we at last time? Okay. Oh yeah, we weren't there yet. All right. So last time we were talking about Lincoln was having all these problems finding the right general to be in charge of the North, and so finally he chooses Ulysses S. Grant, someone we talked a little bit about before. So it's a picture of Tecumseh Sherman behind that, a very grizzled-looking guy. In fact, Sherman, oddly enough, he's going to cut this swath through the South, but after the Civil War, he's going to come to Texas, and like Robert E. Lee, he's going to be an Indian fighter in West Texas. He's actually going to be the one who routes and gets the Apache out of Texas onto the reservations. And a lot of the troops that fight under him are Buffalo soldiers. You know who that is? Yeah, these are like black soldiers who were Indian fighters.
The black soldiers who like rode on horses and like fought.
Yeah, and the Indians respected them, and they like call them Buffalo soldiers because they respected buffalo. Like I had a coworker that was actually his specialty. He would ride on Buffalo soldiers. Mr. White. I forgot his first name.
Mr. What?
Norris. Yeah. All right, so Total War of the New Standard. Lee faced many setbacks in his thrust to Maryland. Remember, he wanted to go to Maryland and have some converts, have some Confederate converts. Yeah?
Oh, is this like where you said that the people saw the soldiers and they were like, oh, we're going to.
Yeah, look at them. They're all nasty. So we don't want to fight for you. We'll have starve like these guys.
Oh, we don't die.
Yeah. They weren't flashy. They weren't fit. They probably didn't smell good. So.
No, I bet that's
They
not
ate some
fun.
axe.
Oh man, I don't know. I don't know. Axe is like the other end for me. Like that's so strong.
I know, that's why I don't like.
Gosh, and you can tell somebody used the body wash like down the hall.
Yes.
Right.
You really.
All right, so back to this. So unfortunately for Lee, his right-hand man, Stonewall Jackson, died in battle. So the story goes, he was pursuing some troops that were fleeing, and he didn't make it back to his army till dark. And so while him and some of his soldiers were riding on their horses back, his men didn't recognize them and shot him down. And so he's going to wind up dying by friendly fire after the battle's over. So it's nice to be him.
That's sad.
It happens.
Why did you shoot me?
Yeah, in today's military, that was like, especially the early parts of the Iraq War. Most of the troops who died was from accidental friendly fire. So it's because it does stink. It does stink. It's a very real thing. It's very dangerous. We gotta be careful even around friends. So after this, Lee faced a massive loss at Gettysburg. Gettysburg was a lot of people died. He got very angry that he wasn't making headway in this battle, and Lee turned to this guy Pickett, and he told Pickett, "You need to lead your men in a full frontal charge against the Union right now." Pickett knew it was suicide, and so he's going to lead these guys up, and he's going to charge again and again and again, decimating the army. Lee's finally going to come to his senses and realize what he's done, and he's going to spend the whole time just telling his soldiers he's so sorry as they flee back and run away.
Wait.
Okay. He was Robert E. Lee was then forced back to Virginia after this loss, and so you see here like Gettysburg. After this victory, that's when Lincoln's going to have the Gettysburg Address. Very famous speech where he's going to address the nation, where he's going to call the South to come back, but he's also going to demand the freeing of the slaves. Okay, so during this time, also William T. Sherman took complete control of the Mississippi River.
William Tecumseh Sherman.
And so Sherman is going to go one direction. Grant is going to go the other. Grant's now fully in charge of the Union forces, and with Sherman, they conducted what was known as total war. Both generals fought with little regard for troops on either side or for the enemy's civilians. Now, this wasn't for like a wholesale slaughter of civilians, though it did lead to massive hunger and loss of property. As Sherman marched through, and especially they would destroy crops, livestock, burn homes, whole cities, anything that got in the way. They wanted to break the will of the Southern people to make the Confederate Army inoperable. So Grant then fought Lee in the Battle of the Wilderness in 2 days of fighting. During the evening, a fire erupted, and all the wounded men in the forest, so many of them, they weren't able to get CASEVAC. So CASEVAC is when you get your wounded out. Well, they didn't really develop a good system for this back then. So a lot of the wounded men were just laying there hoping their side won so that they could get taken to a field hospital and hopefully patched up. But since the fire erupted, you had hundreds of men, like the soldiers could hear them burning because they couldn't get up and running away. So it was like a horrible nightmare where you just have thousands of people die and the wounded are stuck in this forest fire, right? Like horrible, horrible event. As Lee tried to take his forces to Richmond, Virginia, they met again at Spotsylvania for a brutal 12-day battle. And this battle, it was like a prelude to World War I, trench fighting, where wave after wave of assaulting men are just cut down as they try to make it to the opposition. So yeah, it is a nasty thing here. So the Grant and Sherman bring the willpower to see it done with as fast as possible. And Lee, they're essentially fighting for survival. They realize that if they allow the North to win, it's over for them. So. Those are that's a picture of.
Where did Crossing Field come from?
Oh, you can't see it, but these are human remains. These are bones, and these are freed slaves. And so the South would have trains of enslaved people follow them and try to do like the cooking and some of the menial work and stuff. Though the soldiers had to do a lot of that too. It's just there's a lot of work to do. But the North would often have freed slaves help them out as well. And they were called contraband. So contraband is kind of like in prison terms, contraband is like
Things you're not allowed to have.
yeah, things aren't allowed to happen. And so they were, remember, the Supreme Court said enslaved people are material. They're not humans in the eyes of the law. They're property. And so the military was like, okay, then you're contraband. They're not supposed to have you because of Emancipation Proclamation. So you can.
We're going to confiscate your material.
It was confiscating them, but also Lincoln said you got to free them. But they would allow them to work on the camps and stuff like that. So. And a lot of them didn't have anywhere to go. I mean, you're free. Yeah. I mean, follow the army. And you would have whole families of freed slaves follow the Union Army.
I imagine you followed the army to free some of your other fellow slaves because you're like, hey, they're freeing us. Possibly.
I would imagine so, especially like if you're separating families. Yeah, I could see that. Now the army didn't always take care of them. Like Sherman was notorious for just totally not caring if they starved, whatever. He didn't care if they got lost and recaptured. He didn't care. So the cost of victory, as the two generals tried to in fact, Sherman was extremely racist, if I remember right. As the two generals tried to outmaneuver one another and again met at Cold Harbor, Virginia, the Confederates dug trenches, much like those that we used in World War I 50 years later. So we see once again trench warfare. And they're trying to preserve life. They're losing soldiers. They're running out of ammo. And they're realizing we can't stand in these Napoleonic waves of human meat shields and hope to turn out okay. It doesn't matter how well we maneuver, the losses are unsustainable. Grant relentlessly sent wave after wave after wave of Union troops into the waiting Confederates. And to the Confederates, even the survivors, it was horrific. Most Union soldiers fully expected to die and would even pin their names on their uniforms so they could be identified. Before the battle, many of them wrote their final letters home, telling their family their best wishes and to pray for them. Lee said, "This is not a war, it's murder." Grant lost 25,000 soldiers and 60,000 in the last three battles, more than Lee's entire army. But Grant knew that Confederate losses could not be replaced. Union troops kept coming in from the towns. Lincoln, however, faced the challenge of re-election during this period. And so you see Grant's like, if I've got one thing, I've got a lot of guns and I got a lot of guys. I'm just going to keep throwing them out there. And even if they kill us 2-1, we'll overtake them eventually. So it was definitely bringing that will to fight.
Yep.
It kind of reminds me of like Russian style fighting, like in the Eastern Front, World War II, just where they were notorious for they only had a gun for every 1 out of 2 soldiers, like at Stalingrad or Leningrad, one of the two. And so they were like, so what do you do if you don't have a gun? You just wait till the guy with a gun gets shot, and you can pick it up and charge forward. So it's just not too great, not too great.
No, it's not.
All right, so this is a picture of Lincoln's second inaugural address.
Hey, we like it. Let's go.
Yeah, he does. Gosh. All right, so election of 1864. So Lincoln needed Grant and Sherman's victories in 1864 in order to win re-election. He was very fearful that he would lose this re-election. The press was so bad because they had been losing so much of the war. The loss of life was really impacting everyone. And a lot of his fellow Republicans were like, do we really need to keep all of the states together? Why don't we just make peace and live and let live? So he even personally told Frederick Douglass, who was his friend by this point, anti-slavery Frederick Douglass, the former slave, that he needed to get as much money together as possible to get as many slaves out of the South now because he was afraid he would lose re-election, the war would be over, and everyone down there would remain slave the rest of their life. He faced opposition in his own party for not going harder on the South, and many of them wanted peace. Democrats, however, were running for presidency as well, and they ran McClellan. So McClellan was running against his former boss. He was the peace candidate. And so you got a lot of people like, oh, maybe this peace thing can work out. And McClellan was talking about, he was saying Lincoln was incompetent and he was an evil man and all this other stuff. And he was like,
I think the mistake was choosing McClellan.
yeah, McClellan was a mistake. So Lincoln chose, in order to reach across the aisle, Lincoln chose a Democrat for his vice president pick, a guy called Andrew Johnson. Andrew Johnson, though he was a Democrat, he didn't like black people, and he was pro-slavery, but he was a nationalist. He was extremely against secession, and he is the only Democrat senator who chose to stay in the Congress. So he was like, hey, that'll work out. So, however, he and Lincoln wanted a massive landslide. Yeah, remember though, the southern states didn't vote because they were not part of the U.S. at the time. But he had all the northern states, his bedrock. So we got to keep them. What's this? I got a phone call from I don't know where.
That's not good.
Nah, it's somewhere in Texas. I get a lot of spam calls, but I'm kind of expecting a call. I'll see if they leave a voicemail. If it's important, you leave a voicemail, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what we hope.
All right, so Lincoln won. His anxieties, at least in this part, they're gone. Meanwhile, however, the war's still going on, and Grant ordered Sherman to take his army as far into the South as possible so they could destroy the South's resources. They realized, unlike McClellan and even unlike Lincoln, you got to crush the army. The Southern government didn't really mean much. And how do you crush the army? Well, if people are getting letters back from home saying, you have to come home now. The house is destroyed. We are going hungry. There's no one here to help us get food. You're probably going to leave the army and go help your family, your wife, and your kids. And that's what they were hoping for, to break the spine of the Lee's army. Oh, good, voicemail. Sherman advanced from Tennessee to Atlanta, where he fired cannons on the city for days and destroyed the surrounding countryside. And this is, even to this day, it's known as the burning of Atlanta. And so, like even today, a lot of people are in Georgia hate Sherman to death. And so, yeah, he is going to burn the city to the ground, barely allowing the civilians to flee. The Confederate General John Bell Hood, which Fort Hood here in Texas is named after. A lot of our forts are actually named after Confederate generals. You got Fort Bragg, Fort Hood, so on and so forth. Ordered an evacuation of Atlanta, allowing Sherman to take the city. Now, why do you think we would do that? Why do you think we would name military bases, U.S. Army bases, after Confederate generals? Joseph, why do you think? Why would the U.S. Army, which represents the North nowadays, I guess you'd say back then, why would they name Army bases after Confederate generals?
Maybe it's where the Confederate generals died.
Well, also because they were such great leaders. Even though they were on the opposite side, they were still very good tacticians.
What do you think?
Our school is named after Robert E. Lee, but he was on, well, not our school, a school.
It used to be until they changed it. I think it cost millions of dollars too.
To change
But
the name.
everybody still calls it.
Yeah, because they
That is actually ridiculous. I hate that.
Yeah. Alyssa, what do you got to say?
Also to show that they were at some point part of the United States.
Yeah, it was a big part was reconciliation. It was like, hey guys,
We love you still. It's okay.
during Reconstruction, it's going to be a big deal. They're going to be like, hey, we're still all American now, right? Bygones be bygones. So that was the whole idea. Lincoln's idea of Reconstruction was is heal the nation, bring us back together. We're all brothers and sisters again.
What was that? Well, it's like before Lincoln, the United States is, but after Lincoln, the United States were.
So what that means is
The
Now
states were
we're,
united.
yeah, it's no longer, I'm a, like New Yorker first or whatever. Now I'm an American first. That's the whole idea behind it. Sherman occupied the city for a time and then burned it for his 300-mile march to the sea. Union General Philip Sheridan acted as Sherman did in Shenandoah Valley, doing the same thing, laying waste to Lee's food supply by destroying, both military and civilian materials. So they're going along, they are blowing up, they're blowing up railroad tracks, they're chopping down telegraph wires, burning crops, shooting cows, anything they can do, In Sherman's march from the ruins of Atlanta to South Carolina, his army destroyed, I just said that. Savannah, Georgia readily surrendered to him. So Georgia was like, that's enough. When he reached Columbia, South Carolina, he burned that city down as well. Eventually, Union forces will take back Fort Sumter where it all began. So it's symbolic. It's symbolic. We destroyed your homes, and we got our fort back. Oops. Here, this is going to be our, do you want me to go back? Okay, this is going to be our last one on the Civil War one, and then we'll go. Huh? Sherman was north, burning the Confederate cities. That's okay. All right, and the war ends. By 1865, Robert E. Lee decided to have Richmond abandoned. He's like, forget these guys, they're worthless anyways. And to consolidate his armies. So he's trying to pull them all back together for survival. Grant found the half-starved Confederates and cut them off at Petersburg, Virginia. Lee had almost no ammunition left, no resupply, no little food, and he even had less troops than Grant. On April 9th, Lee sent a note to Grant offering surrender. Before that note, there was some token fighting, but he knew it was over. Grant readily accepted this letter of surrender and decided to meet him as an equal. They met in a private home at Appomattox Courthouse, Virginia. The two met as equals peacefully. In fact, Lee tried to offer him the sword, a very ancient token of one military surrendering to another. There'd even be instances in World War II where military officers would do that kind of thing. He said he didn't want it. He thought it was kind of silly, which is kind of like Grant. Grant was like super down to earth, and Lee was a bit more formal. Grant allowed the Confederates, to go home with their uniforms and sidearms, but they had to turn in their rifles. No rifles, no cannons, guys. But he said, you're free. We're not going to arrest you. We're not going to execute you. They even had his soldiers share their rations with the Confederates. So they all had a meal together instead of killing each other.
That's sweet.
And got to go home. Grant then ordered his soldiers to share their arms to that. And he told them, go back to your farms and go help your families. 6 days later, Lincoln would be assassinated by John Wilkes Booth. That's a story all in itself. And that's
there's a movie about it.
I bet there is a movie about it.
National Treasure.
Now, here in a second, I'm going to pull up a few slides from Reconstruction. We're going to go over the main points of Reconstruction. We're going to see the different types of Reconstruction, and we're going to examine the Reconstruction amendments. But that's pretty much going to be it. We can't go through all 12 slides or whatever I got. So we're just going to go through half or something. So let y'all get this last bit here. And of course, if you're interested in the Civil War, there have been more books written in American history about the Civil War and Lincoln than anything I can think of. Extremely well written about. So you can always find some material to read about battles and generals and stuff like that. Just so you know.
Okay.
In fact, I'm thinking about finding one. I'm currently reading one about the Revolution. Well, at least a revolutionary hero.
Yeah.
Pause this and pull up the other one. But I've posted the Reconstruction notes in the Google Classroom. You, of course, won't need all of it, but we will go through some of it. I will not test you over things that we haven't gone over in class, unless it's one or two little things that you could have got from reading out of the book. So always that curveball. Literacy.
Imagine being illiterate. Couldn't be me.
Poor thing. What is that voice?
I would never be literate, sir.
Okay. Well, good luck with your illiterate life.
I don't think.
And that's sad too, 'cause there are people out there, who make it through school illiterate.
Really?
Yeah, it's a
Can't
real
read,
thing.
can't write.
Yeah, but they still get passed along. It happens more in like major cities and stuff like that. But I'm sure there's a myriad of reasons behind that. All right, so let's go ahead and see Reconstruction. So you see Reconstruction is at the very end of the Civil War, 1865, and it ends at 1877, which coincides with the beginning of our last semester's class, the 1302 one. And so why 1877? Well, it has to do with some political shenanigans. It also has to do with the nation's just kind of tired of having a military occupation of half the country. 12 years of military occupation is a long time. It's costly. It's bad politics. So if I skip something, you can go back and look at it on your own. But I don't want to take too much of our remaining class time into it. So 1865, 1877. Why is it called Reconstruction? Because we're reconstructing the nation. All right, some terms. You can go back over and look over these. If these are important terms to know as far as your final, you might be asked a question about a carpetbagger or sharecropping or a scallywag.
I am a scallywag.
Okay, well, okay. I
Whatever that means.
think everybody is now. All right, so you do need to know these three amendments. I put them in their most brief definitions. There's more to them than this. There really is.
Slaves protected the right to vote for citizens, including slaves.
Yeah,
Or
so,
including black Africans.
well, it was made for former slaves,
It is made
but we
for
have expanded it since then.
women's.
Huh?
Women's.
Well, no, that's going to be another amendment coming up later.
That was what, 1918?
I think the 19th was prohibition, wasn't it? I think it was the 20th amendment.
20th?
That was the 20th.
Wow.
Dang it. I gotta Google it. I should know this because we were just talking about this like yesterday and I already forgot. All right.
Shows what she's not on.
Where's the senatorial one? That's Vice President. Ah, poop. Okay. Maybe it was the 19th. Because we were just talking about it yesterday and I had it yesterday, but today it slipped my memory.
Ah.
Yeah, you're right, Logan.
I am correct.
It's that 19th. Okay. So, boo-boo. All right. Now, there are more amendments to these. Like, they also cover things like where you cannot hold federal office if you've ever been in rebellion against the country. They also protect civil rights, things like that. So there's more to it. But for our most brief definition, 13th, freed all slaves. 14th, granted citizenship to former slaves. And 15th, protected the right for slaves to vote. And that's what it was about. These are called the Reconstruction Amendments, which is about, like, what do we do with all these people that they used to say resist, and now we got to make sure that they're citizens. Well, get rid of those old Supreme Court rulings and stuff like that. All right, so the first Reconstruction. So Lincoln was already making plans before the war was over on how to get everybody back together again. And he wanted to do it as quickly as possible and as peacefully as possible. And he wanted goodwill between everybody. He really was. They wanted to be a peacemaker, right? So, presidential reconstruction. The rejoining of the Union or Reconstruction came in two phases. Presidential, which was Lincoln, and then guess what? He's assassinated, so his vice president's going to take over, Johnson. And then congressional, which will also be called radical Reconstruction. So before his assassination, President Lincoln saw a need for joining the nation together before the end of the Civil War. So he wasn't psychic, he just saw that they were winning. In 1863, he came up with what was known as the 10% plan. And so it was basically if 10% of the voters in the South just agree to come back to the U.S. and say, we're not going to do that anymore, he'll let the whole state in. He wished for a quick reunification of the nation and to encourage Southerners to renounce the Confederacy and accept emancipation. So it's like, hey, just say you were wrong, stop owning slaves, say you won't do it again, we'll let you back on board, right? Sounds good.
That's pretty good to me. I'd take it.
And it was pretty lenient, but unfortunately for the South, Lincoln's going to get shot, and then things are going to go in a way that makes the Republicans mad, and they're going to go full harsh as possible against the South. So, fate would have it, kindness would win that day.
How do you get rid of the Supreme Court rule?
You can overrule it, or you can amend the Constitution. Or you could, if they rule against a law, you change the law in a way that they'll say is legal. But yeah, you can't do it through a lower court. So.
Oh, so that's the only way to
Mhm.
even.
Yeah, change the law, or you could try this out and just nullify it. Just don't listen to them. They have no enforcement power. Their enforcement power is actually the other branches of government. So it's not like they have like special shock army of Supreme Court troops that are going to come in and make the other branches do X, Y, and Z. They could just choose it.
That'd be super cool.
Actually, the executive is like the only one who has.
But they rule against the executive all the time. But the executives are like, oh no, okay, so
Yeah,
it's kind of one of those
it's
things.
really that they're all at the mercy of the executive, but the executive is too afraid to use the power that he has because he
All
knows
agree.
that nobody will listen.
And that's why culture is so important.
Yeah.
I mean, like you look at Tyler. Tyler doesn't have like a million cops. If everybody just decided to ignore the laws, the police wouldn't have that much power. They could only enforce so many people at a time. So it's really, we all just have
Exactly.
a sense of trust and understanding where we try to live with each other.
But no.
All right, so presidential reconstruction continued. As soon as the armies took the southern states, they appointed, governors to keep order. So this was a military occupation. They're like, the army took over a state. Here is a governor that is installed to put you under martial law, military law, while we figure things out. Lincoln issued pardons in the Proclamation of Amnesty in Reconstruction of 1863. Those who swore loyalty to the Union and accepted abolition got this pardon. The president has the power to pardon for all crimes. Well, criminal crimes. I don't think they can pardon for civil ones, if I remember right. Only high-ranking Confederates were disqualified. So, like, if you were the president or general, Robert E. Lee, you probably weren't going to get it. The Lee will be okay. There's only going to be a handful of people that are going to go to prison for all of this. And that's because people who run like really nasty POW camps and stuff like that, like head political positions. Hey. They sure did. Oh, they said you said yes, and it was up to me. Yeah, that's what they said. Sounds like I was bamboozled. Well, it's holding up so far. It's not the way I wanted it, though. Okay. I know. Ugh. It's my fault. Honestly. No problem. See you later. Alright. So then all they have to do is take it over. And of course, hello. Go right ahead. All right, so back to this. When 10% of, remember the 10% rule, when 10% of registered voters, as of the census of 1860, so the census of 1860 is like, that's just like the last time they had a good count of what 10% was before the war. They weren't exactly holding census counts in the southern states while they were fighting them. Had taken the oath and wrote a new state constitution abolishing slavery. So they got to make a new constitution that says no more slavery. Then they could re-enter the U.S. Just 10%, 1 out of 10 people. The other 9 out of 10 could really hate the Union and be like bitter and angry and talking violence, all this other stuff. But as long as the law was there and as long as 1 out of 10 was okay, we'll let you back in. So this sounds pretty lenient, right?
Really?
But I'm not going to read that part. All right, but when Lincoln is assassinated, and his vice president, Andrew Johnson, is going to take over. He is going to be, at first, he's going to keep up Lincoln's spirit of Reconstruction, but then he's going to get very lenient with the ex-Confederates. He's going to be actually pretty petty. He was known for being extremely drunk, too, like all the time. In fact, they had to wake him up and eventually drag him out of the presidential inauguration when Lincoln was sworn in the second time because he was just so sauced up.
Man.
He gave pardons to all Southern rebels as long as they personally came to the White House and asked him for a pardon. And a lot of people think it's because of his vanity. And so there were like images of like every day, dozens of these wives of these ex-Confederates coming in and asking for pardons for their husband. And of course he would grant them as they came in. He just kind of wanted people to grovel a little. Johnson believed that reform in the South should come from the states, not the federal government. And so that didn't jive well with the North, especially people who had family members that died in the war or they fought in the war. They were like, wait a second, if we won a war, why are we letting the defeated power pick the terms? The war will be meaningless if it all goes back the way it started. It has to have meant something. So a lot of people were extremely insulted by what Johnson was doing. And Johnson is going to be extremely mad at them. He's going to veto law after law after law. But because he's so unpopular, his vetoes will be worthless because they'll be overridden over and over and over and over. So he's going to be essentially like a president with no power. They're just there waiting him out of office. He's going to go down in history as one of the most unloved presidents in American history. So,
Even though he wasn't even that bad of a person.
well,
He just was pretty bad.
You got stories?
he had some flaws. I mean,
He was pretty bad, but there were definitely worse people.
Well, I mean, I'm sure there were, but I mean, he's like, I can't say I've ever heard of a Andrew Johnson fan. I mean, but yeah, he was pretty much neutered. He had no power. He was kind of a powerless president.
You know what? People complain about our current presidents, but at least our current presidents aren't a bunch of drunks.
I hope not. I don't know. Maybe stories will come out one year. You'll be like, whoa, I had no idea. You know, it's like,
President Trump was a meth addict.
gosh. Well, he didn't look like it. All right. So here we're gonna wrap it up. All All right, so enter the radical Republicans. And so the radical Republicans are going to come in and they're going to push in these constitutional amendments. The radical Republicans are going to do certain things. They're going to make sure that the military occupation lasts. They're going to institute something called the Freedmen's Bureau. And the Freedmen's Bureau is going to be a very, very big, it's going to be the biggest government bureaucracy up to that time. They're going to do things that the federal government never done before. Build schools, educate people, feed people, give them loans, give them farming implements, just do all kinds of stuff, clothe them, build houses, build churches, all of these things. They're doing it not just for newly freed blacks, but also for a lot of the poor whites too, who didn't have anywhere to go anymore. You gotta remember, there was a lot of destruction going on. And these abolitionists are going to call for essentially a punishment of the South. And they're going to help make sure that a lot of these states are, for the first time, are going to have black politicians. Now, of course, to a lot of the former slave owners, this is going to be very, very angry for them. And so, though it's going to work out for a little while, once that power starts to slip, you're going to start seeing political terrorism against a lot of black people, because now they got the right to vote. Well, how do you think that all of these Confederate soldiers, especially the well-to-do ones, are going to feel about that? They're probably going to be very angry, and they're probably going to resort to the violence they've been practicing in the war for a long time. And so you're going to see the birth of movements like the Ku Klux Klan and stuff like that.
Oh, no.
And so, yeah, it's going to be really bad. It's going to be really bad. Here, we're just going to kind of breeze through this.
Cool Kids Club.
No. All right. So, unfortunately, for a lot of newly freed blacks, they're going to enter what's called the sharecropping system. And so the people who own the plantation land still own the land. They still have crops that need to be planted and harvested. Well, a lot of these former slaves, they're like, where am I going to go? I've been here forever. My mom was here forever. My grandma was here forever. Oh, this is all I know. So they're going to be given a piece of land of the plantation to rent by paying with crops that they grow. But unfortunately, it's a system they can never get out of. They never really make money. They're just put into debt. And so they're
How do you
doing
get into debt?
the same things like that. Well, all right, so you're not really making too much in money. And so how it works is, all right, so let's say you can make a yield of 100% per year, right? Well, the guy loaning you the land might be like, I need 80% of that for use of the land. You're like, oh, okay. Now I got 20%. Oh no, I need seed crop and tools and things like that. Okay. The guy who owns the place is like, I have a little store. Give me 15%. And so some years you don't owe, so you're left with 5%. But some years you only have an 80% yield. What do you do? It's on loan. Sharecropper's like, okay. Or the plantation owner. I'll let you get away with it, but you're going to owe me next year. And so it builds because and sometimes you're 100% due to falling crop prices because of like new things like fertilizer and stuff like that. There's more of it in the market, so your value's less, but your debt's going up higher. You still owe that amount of dollars, but you're making less dollars on your crop. And so it grows and it grows and it grows until some of them just wind up having to run away. So this is when we're going to see the birth of Jim Crow laws. And so Jim Crow laws were based on the old slave codes, right? And so they basically just made them into free people codes, essentially.
Oh, yes.
You see the birth of KKK. We talked briefly about that. You're also going to see the birth of something called the lost cause ideology. And so this is something that's going to be used to kind of explain like a romantic view of the Southern cause in the war for the Confederates. So it's like trying to uphold a noble old style of life that's now gone due to federal occupation. So you'll see the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments come in. Unfortunately, this is going to make the women's suffrage movement very mad. Because if we fought for the right for black men to have the right to vote, but we didn't get it. And so you're going to see a separation between women's rights and black rights. Ulysses S. Grant will become the next president after Johnson. Very popular. Won a major war. You win a big war, you get to be president. That's usually how it works. But even though he is going to be very effective in using the military to do things like put down the KKK, he's going to allow his personal friends to basically run the executive branch and get super rich off of illegal deals and theft. And it's going to come to light. He's going to become very unpopular. Let's see, let's get that. And so, yeah, a lot of Black Republicans will come into elected offices as congressmen, senators, and so on and so forth. But they're going to get a lot of pushback from the Southerners. Move down there. Sorry, I'm trying to make it fast. You're going to have essentially, the Democrats in the South are going to come up with a plan to try to end Reconstruction. They're like, hey, if we can make it look like we're going to do things that the North likes, maybe they'll leave us alone. And so eventually it starts to work out. And then you're going to have the Compromise of 1877, because you're going to have a presidential tie between Samuel J. Tilden, the Democrat, and Rutherford B. Hayes, the Republican. And they're going to come up with a deal where the Republicans will be like, okay, give us the presidency and we'll end Reconstruction. And Democrats are like, okay, we don't need to be president that bad. Get rid of Reconstruction. And so all troops were withdrawn, federal regulations gone, and the South was allowed to kind of go into that Jim Crow mode we talked about like during the Gilded Age and stuff like that. That's kind of brief, but that's going to have to end it. So,
Wow.
yeah, we could have spent more time on it, but I think because finals are Friday.
We went over like 2 units today.
I know.
We like speed ran the rest of the Civil War.
Mhm.
And like,
Well, there was only 2.
Yeah, there's only like a little bit of Civil War left, but
Actually, no, that's not true.
there were like 5. You can think about it.
No, I just,
as you can imagine, I am going to ask questions about both. I want to see what I can piece together. It's going to be 15 questions, but you are going to have those 10 bonus questions. You have to do them, but they will not count off. The bonus questions are also, they're cumulative, but there's something that TJC wants for their data collection to make sure to see how much y'all know over the year. I don't pick those questions, they do. So it's just a way to do.
So they'll be easier, right?
I think a lot of them are easier. I don't know. This is what we smell about.
Maybe it's that important one. Possibly.
Probably not. It's 30 seconds. Usually the 30-second voicemails are a robot.
Is it exactly 30 seconds?
31.
Oh, no.
It sounds like somebody's driving in a car but not talking into it.
that's weird.
Oh,
Maybe.
that is a bit odd.
7:13.
Just like Judy. She's a bit old.
Oh, international number. No way. Doesn't look like an international.
Ooh. Hey, look. Go Mansion is girl.
Majin?
Mansion.
What is Majin?
Mansion. Movie style mansion. You are a girl. Just
Oh.
du bist eine Junge.
No.
Junge.
Yuna.
It's spelled Junga. Junge. For me,
Oh,
Oh.
Really
Oh, that was.
Oh wait, no, never mind. Power to this turn it up.
What we're doing.
You move it up.
Oh, I guess it does.
Oh, the report.
It goes. Actually, yeah.